On BBC1 in Points of View.
Good evening, and a large response to BBC2's States of Mind, a series of programmes running last week which set out to challenge the myths and mysteries of mental illness. Is smoking pot really dangerous? Spirited opposition to what you considered a thoroughly biased look at cannabis by Panorama. And as you might expect, terrible cries of bad taste aimed at she who lives on Bolly and regards Harvey Nicks as her local supermarket.
I've got to nip into the shop and then on to the office, darling, for a brainstorm.
I didn't know you still had the shop.
Oh, yeah, I still got it, darling, but it's not doing very well. The supply's dropped off, you know. India's had it, been there. Africa's dried up completely now. It's ridiculous. Thank God for Grozny, honestly.
The porn industry, a very disapproving P. Schroeder in Ealing, considers...
must be gloating with satisfaction at the free publicity given to both its aims and its products in last Thursday's episode.
Although I don't actually think Adina has their account yet. 12 million people attend GP surgeries every year showing symptoms of mental illness. BBC2 thoroughly explored the subject last week. In Circles of Madness, Marjorie Wallace, Chief Executive of SANE, made a powerful case for better understanding of madness and examined a number of tragedies in which she argued neglect could have been prevented. Huge praise.
I suffer from manic depression and thought the programme portrayed mental illness excellently. I've never seen anything like this on television before.
Many like that. Others felt strongly that
the programme sensationalised mental illness and didn't represent those who are made well again and returned to normal life.
The hope of a normal life is not, alas, within the scope of Philip, the first subject of Minders, a 6-part series delving into the day-to-day reality of caring for the mentally ill. Philip thinks he is John Baptist and is related to the Queen. In this bit of the film, although he doesn't know it, he's about to be sectioned, and he later tries to escape from hospital to avoid the drugs which leave him a trembling wreck. You were horrified by how he was treated.
If there was a monarchy in Russia at the moment, I would be the successor to the Tsar.
It's a guy who's going to hospital under Section 2. He's a Ghanaian chap who lives on his own.
Yep.
But he has actually been detained before, so probably he knows the score.
Just praying that I would get in touch with my auntie, that she would reply to the letters I've sent to her.
Your auntie is?
Yeah, that's the Queen.
Several dozen letters question the wisdom of locking up and drugging a young man who appeared loopy but harmless. Ms. Jackie Rigdon in Islington, North London.
By the end of the programme, I was convinced the doctors and the authorities needed to have their minds altered far more than the very civilised young man. I found it harrowing to watch him deteriorate in the most appalling way through treatment supposed to cure him. It was pretty obvious this patient knew the drugs would damage him almost beyond recognition, and yet he had no choice in the matter.
Another viewer rang to demand...
who pays these guys? At the start of the programme, he was a house-proud, neat and tidy person who didn't offend his neighbours and was capable of looking after himself. But he was forced to leave by the police and spend several months locked away in a psychiatric hospital. The final insult was the end of the programme. He was back home, visited by a social worker because he was incapable of looking after himself, and his house and body were an untidy mess.
Great wails of disapproval also on the sporting front, aimed at those in charge of the buttons. In a nutshell, last Tuesday at 10:30 p.m.
We had just been watching the quarter-final of the World Snooker Championship between Jimmy White and John Parrott. The score was 12-11 and a maximum of 2 frames to play when it switched from the most important tournament of the season to the smug and sarcastic Jeremy Paxman on Newsnight.
Had it not, of course, those of us who are regular Newsnight addicts would have been thoroughly dismayed, as were Ready Steady Cook fans, one who considers it
a completely ridiculous idea that a programme with millions of viewers should be replaced by snooker. I hope the person responsible has been flogged at dawn in order that he or she may realise their unforgivable error of judgment.
He, Miss Robinson in Doncaster, youngish, curly-haired, cool Michael and controller of BBC2. Meanwhile, Points of View has been taking the Euro Air and followed the Antiques Roadshow to Brussels.
I have brought today a Brussels lace wedding veil, plus my wedding dress, which was made out of a parachute.
The experts who are there, I think they are wonderful people, and that's especially why I came here today.
1 o'clock, the day before the roadshow opens. The team is setting up at the usual breakneck speed. o'clock and the larger pieces of furniture arrive. Before the show comes to town, people are invited to send in photographs of any interesting items they want valued. BBC experts inspect the treasures. Those that are chosen must arrive at the venue well wrapped and well insured.
Surprisingly, the items have been very similar to what we might find in England, a mixture of continental and English furniture.
9:30 the next day and the Brussels Antiques Roadshow opens its doors. Everyone attending is given a ticket showing where to queue to meet the appropriate expert. Those people chosen for filming are not told anything about their item until the recording. And from an average of 3,000 visitors, about 25 objects are featured on each roadshow.
I suppose in percentage terms, it's probably about 90% of what we see has no great value. But amongst that, of course, we find the gems.
It's terribly exciting. This is the highlight of our visit to Europe.
Well, I like the programme because it's full of surprises. And the look on people's faces when they suddenly realise they're sitting on a fortune, it's rather like the lottery.
I would put the value at anything between £10,000 and £15,000, whatever that is in Belgian francs. You can tell me probably.
Look at what's happened. 5,000 people here. So it's amazed everybody. We've been delighted. And it proves, really, that it's an international formula, the roadshow. It could work anywhere.
It's been a wonderful experience to see how the setup goes, how it works, and it's been really good.
I'm sure it'll be a great success in Brussels. Everybody will be talking about it for ages, I think.
Amazing how many expatriates in the city. Panorama the week before last took a look at cannabis and claimed far from being safe and innocent, it can cause memory loss, low birth weight babies and cancer. Yet it's no longer considered to be dangerous. The programme highlighted one Kent school.
This school in Kent could be any British school. A nationwide survey of thousands of schoolchildren published today reveals that 1/3 of 15 and 16-year-olds admit to smoking cannabis. At the Abbey school, children are no longer expelled if they're caught smoking pot.
It's a fact of life that so many are involved in it. You can't afford to kick everybody out. You might end up eventually with more people out of school than in it.
Well, much disagreement with the Panorama findings. Complaints the programme took an inflexible line and then set out to prove it. The headmaster of the Abbey school, who you've just seen there, Peter Walker, rang to say,
Panorama did a lot of filming in school. They didn't use the part of the interview in which I said that I believe every school in the country has a drug problem, and my school is no exception. We deal with drug education in a positive way. Every drug-related incident at the Abbey school is thoroughly investigated and appropriate action taken. And drug education is vital if we're to cut down on the country's big drugs problem.
Emailers especially considered the programme to be a blatant piece of propaganda promoting suspect one-sided statistics. Several demanded to know, as did Stuart Young in Edinburgh.
Why was no academic or medical expert in favour of cannabis interviewed? Do you honestly believe the experts featured represents the majority in the scientific community? The programme mentioned the cancer-causing risks of cannabis. Such a controversial subject surely called for an opposing viewpoint.
Now, a word or two from the Reverend Barry Etherington.
As a vicar, I take a professional interest in songs of praise on Sunday nights. It's usually well done, and I know lots of people watch it who don't darken the church's doors. But a plea to the producers, can you please get those people in the pews to smile and look cheerful? The Christian faith is meant to be enjoyable, so smile, you songsters, you're not at a funeral.
Furthermore, we visited the cathedral town of Rochester to see if people there agreed with the Reverend Barry.
Rochester.
Rochester sits on the banks of the River Medway.
Sir Francis Drake, the explorer, grew up here.
Rochester has the second oldest cathedral in England.
And Rochester upon Medway is multicultural. Like most urban cities, there are more than 20 different religions practiced. We sought some views from local worshippers.
I think the programmes, Christian programmes and religious programmes, should be spread throughout the week. There are certain worship programmes which are very useful for people who can't go to church. I don't think necessarily that those programmes should be just geared at times when other Christians are worshipping.
There are gaps, particularly in tea time viewing for children.
There are, a whole range of programmes which children can sit and watch. Very rarely do I see something for children which will help them understand why people go to church on Sundays, why there are fights and wars over religion.
One that I watch occasionally is Heart of the Matter, and that's one that I quite enjoy. I like the approach. Usually I find that I learn something.
There are now 800 women deacons. Canon Ruth Wintle believes women of her generation find in this role enough scope for their energies and commitment without actually needing to be a vicar.
I'd like to see religious programs used not just to inform people about other religions so that we can try to promote a more tolerant and understanding society, but also to lift people's spirits.
The more programs we have about different cultures, the more I believe will be the understanding of different cultures towards different cultures.
There's no reason why it can't be entertaining. A religious program can't be entertaining. Perhaps that may be one area the BBC have fallen for.
The greatest thing about Songs of Praise is that it makes people aware of community. And it makes people aware that this is still possible in this day and age.
Hamish Macbeth closed for business last Sunday. The series based on the hilarious books of MC Beaton and about a Highland policeman who is confused, unlucky in love and frankly poor at catching criminals. He has much taken your fancy.
How could the BBC do this to me? For the first time in living memory, I've actually looked forward to Sunday evenings, and now I won't know who wins Hamish's hand until next year.
And
the previews of Hamish Macbeth didn't inspire very much enthusiasm, but we're now well and truly hooked.
Cardiac Arrest, a bleak look at the NHS, or a black comedy, or both if you prefer, continues to delight. Here's one of the young housemen fumbling his way through.
This white stuff here is fluid around your lung. I need to take some of the fluid off to make your breathing easier.
Also, several angry calls, always a good sign. Objections to racism.
The Indian doctor has given a very rough ride indeed.
As well as complaints of...
This was a party political broadcast for the Labour Party.
Presumably that from someone who hasn't visited an NHS hospital recently. Finally, as temperatures soar and summer beckons, one parent plaintively asks...
I'd be most grateful if you could explain why the Christmas edition of Superman was screened last week. And help convince my 3-year-old that Father Christmas won't be here for another 8 months.
Just tell him, Mr. Thompson, that's show business. Ginger and Fred to play us out.